Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners of Boulder County. It is Thursday, August 26th, 2010. We are here for a public meeting about subdivision road reconstruction and the advisory ballot results. And for that purpose, we will turn to our Transportation Director, George Gerstle.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, hang on a second, George. And I want to note for the record that all three commissioners are present. Commissioner Perlman, Tour, and Domenico are here. Thanks. Sorry.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm here today to present the results of the advisory ballot on the subdivision paving local improvement district and to discuss in a little bit more detail what the results seem to be showing and ask for some discussion on what our next steps should be. So with that, first I want to thank you for letting us dive into this difficult issue. It's something that's been, I think, brewing for some time, and it has come to a point where we need to explicitly address this issue, and I think by you providing us that direction to dive into this difficult issue, it's necessary, and I appreciate that. But I also want to just make sure it's clear that a lot of people put a lot of work into this effort. From our maintenance side, Dan Hirschman, Ted Plank, John Mosher, Randy Powell, who spent a lot of time and effort analyzing the past and the future of the pavement in these roads, mapping it, looking at it every which way, but including up. And on the Transportation Administration Engineering Planning Group, a lot of people put a lot of work, especially I want to acknowledge Dave Watson, our GIS staff, who did a lot of good analysis that I'll be presenting today. And especially, I want to acknowledge Rose Walters and Monica Ortiz, who are our administrative group, who took a lot of phone calls, did a lot of mailings, took a lot of difficult questions, and responded as best they could to those questions. They did a great job. And then a lot of people throughout the county. Bruce Knight did a terrific fiscal analysis of the different options with Margaret Parrish. Michelle, Krozek, Dan, Barb in the Public Information Office helped tremendously. Our attorneys, Poppy Forbes, who ran the mailing, and about over 10,600 different mailings out at different times throughout the year, and solved problems with the post office quickly. Assessors, treasurers. So it was a real collaborative group that worked on this, and I want to make sure I want to acknowledge them and know that I want you to know that a lot of people put a lot of effort into this. And I also want to acknowledge the public and the subdivision paving work group, who likewise put a lot of effort into this effort, looking at numbers, spending a lot of hours looking at a lot of numbers, coming in to sit down individually with me and others to go through those numbers and understand them. So I thought I appreciate that energy that went into the effort. So just quickly, the problem. 70% of the subdivision roads, paved roads, are in poor or fair condition, and that's a problem. And those that are in good condition are deteriorating. If we were to bring all the roads to good condition in 5 years, it'd be about $22 million over 5 years. We looked at the option that we presented to the potentially affected property owners in the improvement district, and it would be $25 million over the 15-year period. When we delay, it costs money, between $1.5 to $2 million a year for every year of delay, increase in costs. And not just looking at the numbers and the models and the pavement, a lot of people in subdivisions are unhappy with the state of the roads and have been letting us know. So a quick picture of what roads pavement looks like in Boulder County. This is 2009. Red and yellow are the poor and fair roads, and you can see all the various yellow and red squigglies in the eastern part of the county, which are largely in subdivisions, and it's a picture of the problem. When you look at it number-wise, we've dividing between subdivision roads and the rest of our county system. 70% of the subdivision paved roads are in fair or poor condition, and the pavement quality index is worse than the rest of our system, and that's not a surprise because we put a high priority on keeping care of the roads that serve the most people and provide the most critical connections. So again, pavement quality on the primary roads is 7, subdivision roads is 5.8. This is what it looks like for an average for our primary roads. This is about what it looks like for our subdivision roads. And so it's not a pretty picture on average. And it's a pretty ugly picture in a lot of places. We're finding increasing numbers of subdivision roads are approaching this sort of condition and require total reconstruction. And it causes an increase in our maintenance costs because when we have situations like this, it's really hard to plow without plowing up pavement. And it's really hard to patch just a hole like this because it's going to crack right around the edges, and it's a little bit of a never-ending job. So that presented the picture. That was pretty much the picture we presented to you a year ago. We formed the subdivision paving work group, invited all the homeowners associations with subdivisions with paved roads and anybody else who had called in the recent past to come talk with us and look at the issue. We had about 25 participants in the meetings, 4 meetings, including a work session with you. We had 2 to 3 informational meetings. All meetings were noticed publicly in the papers and had quite a good turnout at those informational meetings. We've presented to more than 10 homeowners associations throughout the spring and summer. We've had guest editorials in the Longmont Times Column, the Daily Camera, Left-Hand Courier ran articles. We had numerous letters to the editors, television and radio coverage. So a lot of interest in this process. We sent postcards to all 10,600 property owners who would be affected by the potential improvement district. The first one to let them know what was going on and direct them to our website. The second, to give them an update and ask them to fill out a survey to get their sense of some possible ways of approaching the problem, of which we got around 2,000 responses to the survey. We had an extensive listserv of over 200 participants and hundreds of emails that we responded to, phone calls, and individual meetings. So I think it's safe to say people know what the issue is and what the problem is after this process. Some of the key messages that we learned from the process, the frustration and with the historic policy, there's a recognition of the need. Most people saw and indicated through the surveys that something should be done. Roads are falling apart. Keep the costs low. General sense was no more than $200 per property per year. The county needs to contribute a recognition that a number of these roads are used by more than local subdivision residents. Everyone should get a similar benefit. If they pay in the same amount, they should get an equivalent benefit from what they pay. The desire was to have a permanent solution. The local improvement district didn't accomplish that goal, but that was some of a key message. And finally, there should be a vote. If we're going to do this, people should be able to express their thoughts on whether they support or oppose whatever's being proposed. So we proposed, based on this guidance, the improvement district of $130 a year per property for 15 years, total cost of just under $2,000, and every road would be repaved and chip sealed over that 15-year period. There's a significant county contribution that you indicated you're willing to make, which equated to over 17% of the total cost of the improvement district, including the rehabilitation of the collector roads in subdivisions that provide key connections. Using our forces to chip seal roads, we can do it about 32% less expensively than the private sector, and that you would provide upfront funding by loaning money from reserve accounts at a low interest rate, which was not incorporated into that 4.4 million, but is a significant savings also. So the total cost of the improvement district would have been about, of the improvement district to the property owners, would have been about $21 million. So we, based on your direction, took that to the ballot. We contracted with the Longmont City Clerk to administer the ballot counting. Over 10,600 ballots were mailed to all potentially affected property owners based on the assessor's database of property ownership. So every property got a vote. If a person owned multiple properties, they got multiple votes. 49% of the, a little bit more than 49% of the mailed ballots were returned. Less than 2% were undeliverable because of change in address, or for various reasons the post office couldn't deliver. And we had just under 50 ballots that were postmarked after the deadline that was set. And the results were 58% of the ballots that were returned opposed creation of the proposed improvement district. 42% supported the improvement district. So we did some quick, over the last couple days, analysis of the results. And I don't expect you to read this map. It's on the back is a paper copy, and we'll have a copy on our website either Friday or Monday morning, so people can delve into the detail if they choose to. But we looked at the results for each subdivision in terms of support of the ballots, the number of ballots that were returned, and as well as the pavement quality, average pavement quality in that subdivision, to see if we could understand and learn from the results. And we also took that same information, looked at it another way, where we plotted the subdivisions, how subdivisions supported the proposal versus the pavement quality in that subdivision. The pavement quality of 5 is kind of a bright line, but when pavement quality is below 5, things are in very bad shape. And we plotted the subdivision's support against the pavement quality. And we came up with some interesting, maybe not surprising, but some interesting results and conclusions. And as we spend more time looking at it, we may come up with some additional thoughts. But basically, when we look at the total number of ballots that were submitted by pavement quality, when the roads were in bad shape, less than 5, there was 70% support for the improvement district. When the pavement is in fair or good condition, so not yet bad, there's less than 10% support. So clearly people are supportive of it when roads are in very bad shape. There's generally, in this case anyway, not a willingness to support it to keep the roads from getting in bad shape. We also looked at it by subdivision. 24% of the subdivisions supported the ballot. There's about 109 subdivisions with paved roads in the county. So about 24% of those, did support the ballot. Of those that supported the ballot, 50% have on average poor pavement. So again, it's another way of looking at it. But the underlying message, at least for us, were out of our outreach, people know the county policy and the challenge we're looking at. And second, there's little support or willingness to pay until or unless the pavement is in poor condition. The implications for all of us are it's much more expensive to repair a bad road than to keep it from getting in bad condition. So that's one of the challenges, that if people are only willing to support doing something or pay for repairing a road when it's in bad condition, the costs are going to be much more expensive than if we can figure out how to explain that keeping a road in fair or good condition is cheaper in the long term. The second major implication is that this has major impacts to our maintenance budget. Our day-to-day maintenance costs grow when there's more potholes, more plowing, that poor pavement in the winter, more crack sealing, trying to keep the road together, and more frustrated residents. So if roads continue to deteriorate in subdivisions, we're going to have to look at how we maintain those roads to make sure that we're doing it in the most cost-effective way possible. So what happens now? And that's where it's probably most of our discussion needs to be. Our current policies remain in place. We'll continue to do our best to provide maintenance services, daily maintenance services, as resources and pavement condition allow. As I mentioned, roads deteriorate, maintenance costs will increase, and services may have to decrease. And current policy, each subdivision will remain responsible for rehabilitating its own roads through creation of individual improvement districts or some other payment structure. So, and we're absolutely willing and anxious to work with subdivisions who would like to pursue an improvement district for their subdivisions. We also need to look at ways to work with the subdivisions to create those LIDs that are improvement districts, or other ways to address the pavement quality. We need to figure out how we're going to work with our maintenance strategies for the roads that are in terrible or very poor condition. And we're going to have to figure out how to talk to people and keep roads from getting in bad condition, because it's much more cost effective and less expensive for everybody. So with that, concludes my presentation on the results, and be looking and interested in your direction on what our next steps should be.
Comments, thoughts?
Well, I'd be willing to start. First, George, I'd like to thank you for your work on this. I think this is one of those things that has clearly been an issue for a while, but over time has become a more and more significant issue as these roads age. And it's one in which I think the easiest course would have been to fix a few of the worst roads while to get us through it for another couple of years, while not having a comprehensive solution and not having an approach that would allow us to address this in totality. But I don't think that's the right way to go. I think the right way to go is to be straight with people about the problem that we face and work with the community to explore comprehensive solutions. And I know that has been a very both time-consuming and tough process, and just want to thank you for really being the point person on that. And as we move forward, I do think that we're going to need to do some further exploration of options, because I don't think that this leaves us in a very good position as we move forward. And as you look at the roads that are out there in subdivisions, and if we look, for instance, at, was it 26 subdivisions where there was support for moving forward, largely the subdivisions that have roads in very, very poor pavement quality, I think we're faced with sort of a dual issue, one being that it would be administratively extremely difficult to administer 26 different improvement districts if those subdivisions wish to move forward, and I think would be very expensive both to administer those districts and to be mobilizing work for multiple different subdivisions in different areas where we're not able to get economies of scale. At the same time, I think it would be very difficult if there are residents in those subdivisions who are willing to pull together and support an improvement district. It would be very difficult to say to them, no, we're not going to work with you on that. So I do think that, over the short term, we do need to work with the residents of those subdivisions who have indicated a willingness to support improvement districts, and see whether we can work with those individual subdivisions But longer term, I think we need a comprehensive solution, and I very much agree that it will be far more cost effective if we have a comprehensive solution that allows us the funding to get out and chip seal roads that are in that fair condition before they move to poor condition, and extend the lifetime of those roads by 6 or 7 years. Be cheaper for everyone. Finally, I think that one of the things that is important to recognize is that, with this not having passed, the existing policies will remain in place, and there is not another source of funding that is going to, I think, come to the rescue and allow this work to be done without the subdivisions residents being the primary source of funding for that reconstruction. I think that's both a fiscal reality, given the nature of local government and state government budgets these days, and I think it's a matter of what is fair. And everybody in the county pays their property taxes that go into the road and bridge fund. The vast majority of those properties get no direct road maintenance service because they live in cities where they are paying for their roads in other ways. And ultimately, I don't think we can ask that the entire burden of subdivision reconstruction fall on, primarily those residents who are paying taxes who are not receiving those services. So I don't think that there's any solution where we're just going to be able to tap into the general fund to solve this problem. We're going to need to continue working with the community towards a comprehensive solution.
Want me to go ahead, or you want to?
You can.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll jump in. And a couple thoughts, not completely dissimilar at all. I think, first of all, that the reality is here. It has arrived. And I think all local governments, we know that from talking with other communities through CCI, Colorado Counties Incorporated, that there are communities across the state wrestling with the same issue. And in fact, the state itself is struggling to determine what to do because of the loss of funds coming in. You just have to drive Highway 36 or I-25 or 70 to know that this is an issue that's facing all of us. We have deteriorating infrastructure, and we need to do something about it. Last time we talked, I know Will outlined some of the funding streams that have decreased, especially since the Tabor initiative was passed back in 1992, that we're locked in at those level of funding streams, and so it means that there is a declining amount of revenue that's coming in to support processes like these. So it's a fiscal reality, and it's a fairness question, as Will said. We have 10,000 properties in subdivisions across the county. We have over 100,000 properties that are not in unincorporated Boulder County. And our job as county commissioners is really to serve all the citizens in the broadest way possible. In order for us to do that, we have to step up to some of the challenges. This is one of them, to look at what really are the broadest needs that can be met by the budget that we have to work with. And this is a tough one. I know just one of the very first meetings I had as a commissioner when I started that first week was with a group of homeowners from a subdivision in my district, and their issue was the state of their roads. And it seems like a simple answer when you look at it from just that perspective, that my road outside my house is in terrible shape. Can't you do something about it? Well, once you start looking at what the issue is, that there are as many roads as there are that need help. It's all across the county. It's many citizens. And not only that, but you need to have the long-term vision that George has laid out for us to really understand that in order to address this problem comprehensively and cost-effectively, we need a broader solution. So it's not just the simple answer right outside your door. It's that bigger picture, and how can we all be in this together and find a way to work together to come to a really good solution. So, like the folks in Gun Barrel and Palo Park in the 90s stepped up to the challenge. They knew about it at the time, that they needed to take their own destiny in their hands and asked to create local improvement districts, and they improved the roads in both Gun Barrel and Palo Park. And there have been others in the past that we've talked with as well. And sometimes they pass and sometimes they don't. Sometimes it takes a longer time to get everybody to understand that we really are all in this together, and that the county dollars are all of our dollars. They're not the county's. They're actually every individual taxpayers around the county that's contributed to make a difference in the whole, across the broad brush of the county properties. Other counties in the Front Range have had the same policy in place, that when a road is in a subdivision and there's the statement about maintenance, that maintenance means snow plowing, pothole fixing, that kind of thing. It does not mean rehabilitation or road reconstruction. And if you talk with Larimer County or others, Weld County, they tell taxpayers in subdivisions the same thing. You need to step up to the plate. In fact, in Douglas and El Paso counties, they've actually created transportation districts and transportation authorities that are taxing themselves to do this very thing. So there are some models that are out there that are pretty interesting. And as I look at the bigger picture, I'm thinking of how things will look ahead of us, and that being thoughtful and being long-visioned is going to be so important, because, as was stated, we have a cost-effective, thoughtful option that's been placed before us by the working group that worked so hard on it, and by the transportation staff that really put the numbers together along with all the other staff across the county. And this cost-effective strategy only works if we are all working together. If we wind up doing the 26 individual LIDs, then the cost-effectiveness goes away, and it's a much more difficult problem to try to answer. Huge thank you to the working group. I know it wasn't easy for them to step up to the plate and take it on either. Maybe there's a way that we can take a look at those subs that did approve it and have a coordinated effort there. So, George, I guess that would be the suggestion that you're probably going to hear from all three of us, that there were folks who really know that they need to do something now and are willing to take it on. I know we're going to be wrestling with budget stuff into the future, and that every day in the newspaper I keep seeing more about either CU or the City of Boulder or the various other groups. And so I guess the longer term vision we can have, the better off we're going to be. Thoughts?
Well, I did have a couple of questions for George, but Cindy, it seems like you've answered them, because I did want to make sure that we understood the history of Gun Barrel and Palo Park, and I don't know if you have numbers on that, as some sense for how those ones, when they occurred and how those worked.
That they were in 1995 is when the improvements started. So right in that time frame, the Gun Barrel one was a Gun Barrel General Improvement District, which included both roads and open space. And not every road was treated. The worst roads were either resurfaced or chip sealed. And the improvement district was just, bonds were paid off, I think, just two to 3 years ago. Palo Park is in about the same time frame, and each property was charged, I believe, around, I think it was around more than $2,000 per property, and they just finished paying off it also in the last year, perhaps 2 years, their improvements. And then there's been smaller improvement districts, often to pave a gravel road, that have been proposed and passed also. So there's been a number that have been proposed. The significant ones, I think, are Gun Barrel and Palo Park. And so for at least people who were around then and are around now, it shouldn't be news that this is the policy of the county.
And the other question I had, which Cindy talked about it as well, was how other counties in the Front Range have been dealing with this issue, and I don't know if you have any additional comments.
I don't, and I think talking to folks, there's going to be more and more counties doing less and less of this type of work. just because of the fiscal realities that we're all facing. So improvement districts of one sort or another, I think, are our future, at least in the short term.
Well, I don't want to duplicate what my colleagues have said, but I do think that we do have a structural issue to address, and that ideally we collectively make investments in our infrastructure at the appropriate time, because that's what allows us to get the most out of the money that we do put into roads and bridges. If you don't do a chip seal at the optimal time, you end up going to reconstruction much quicker, and that ends up costing a lot more. And so if you resurface a road, reconstruct and resurface a road, and then never chip seal it, your cycle is much tighter, and your overall costs, when you average them out over the years, are much higher. And George, I don't know if you or Dan have any quantification of that. I mean, we talk about extending the life compared to the amount of cost of a chip seal, but I don't know if you...
Numbers or percentages?
Sure. Well, there's a general commonly...
If you could identify yourself.
Dan Hirschman, Transportation Department, Road Maintenance Division. A general accepted national standard is for every dollar you save today, you'll save $4 in the future. With respect to chip seal, we tend to see about a 20% increase, accelerated deterioration in those pavements where we don't chip seal, and have the ability to seal the cracks, keep the moisture out of the pavement and the base below. Another thing that the chip seal does in extending the life is it adds an additional wearing surface and adds a little bit of tractive effort, and of course seals the roadway. Every road's a little different, but those are some general terms.
Okay. Thanks. And I think that's to me, that's the interesting result of this, is that people are, willing to bite the bullet when the roads get very bad. But I think, yeah, and that's entirely understandable. I think we collectively will be much better off if we can recognize the value of intervening a little bit earlier in that cycle and getting the value of a chip seal before we resurface, or if your roads are bad, to get the resurfacing done and then plan for a chip seal at the appropriate time. And I think that should be our goal. I do think that what has happened in the past year is George and everybody else in the system tackling an issue, and that includes everybody who's here today is wrestling with what is right and what is fair, what can be done, where's money going to come from, what's the appropriate role for government, what's the appropriate role for people who live in these subdivisions. And I think it raises some very important philosophical and equity issues. Is this the kind of service that is reconstructing of subdivision roads that is appropriately borne entirely by the taxpayers as a whole, by people who live in cities who don't use these roads? Or is this something that is more appropriately borne, at least in large part, by the people who live there and get the particular benefit of those roads? I don't know that we've answered that question fully. I think if you talk to people in the city and explain to them the issue, I think you get a different result than if you talk to people who live in the subdivision. I think that's not surprising either. So I think this is the beginning of a conversation. I'm glad we have undertaken it, because I think it's important, because we cannot let these roads continue to deteriorate without addressing them. And so I know it's been very tough on people living in subdivisions to start talking about this, and on the transportation staff and others to look at it. But I do think it's vital, and I don't know where the conversation is going to go, but I think that some of the principles that we should look at is sorting through that and trying to come to collective understanding about that equity question, about who should be paying for this and at what levels. I think we need to try to figure out if we can address some of the issues in subdivisions that have shown an interest in this through this ballot measure. And I also think we need to direct our resources to trying to figure out if there's a way that we can address the issues in areas where we are going to save a lot of money if we're able to do some chip sealing or do some reconstruction work at the right time. Even it costs more if you let poor roads deteriorate further. You know, I think you start dropping off a cliff, and the worse the road gets, the more it costs to bring it back. If you're just talking about the paving surface itself, that's very different than if you have to reconstruct the entire bed of that road. And you know, these are things that, you know, I certainly didn't walk into this job 5.5 years ago knowing anything about, but that you try to grapple with as you come through it. And I think we all have a lot to learn about, you know, how our road system works and what we need to do about it. So that's my sense. I do think that some of what we've talked about today are important clarifications from you, George, about precisely what maintenance means and what the county has been doing and what the county will continue to do, to struggle to do, and what we consider to be rehabilitation, how other communities are addressing this, how we've dealt with it in the past. You know, I think that this is just one of those issues that hasn't seen the light of day, and we've been sort of muddling along. And you know, I think it's not always pain-free to pick up these issues and try to grapple with them. But I think this is an important step, and I think we'll continue this conversation, and hopefully we'll have some solutions to parts of it, and ultimately maybe we will get ourselves to where we really need to be, which is a long-term solution where everybody knows the schedule for the rehabilitation as well as maintenance of all of these roads, because that's what I think our obligation is to come to that. So let's move forward and try to find some of those solutions and continue talking about it.
Okay, thank you. I think that's very helpful. The major, we'll develop various options in terms of ways to look at continue the conversation, and in parallel with that, then we'll work closely with any willing subdivision that wants to pursue an improvement district and help with the analysis and the process and figuring out what may work for that subdivision. So thanks, and thanks again for your support.
And thank you to you, George, to you and your staff for taking this tough one on. I really appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.